When I think about funny West Hollywood, I do have a funny chamber story. So when I first ran for office, I had to meet with the Chamber of Commerce. And I don't really remember everyone who was there, but I was talking about business. And I was talking about how important it is to support your businesses and be business friendly. And one of the people asked me, they said, Abby, I'm a little confused because I thought you're a Democrat. And I said, I am a Democrat, even though when you run for council, it's nonpartisan. And he said, well, that's not how Democrats think of business. And I was so stunned, I hadn't thought about it, because to me, you would support business, candidly, so they generate lots of money, so we have money to spend on all the social programs we want. So it made perfect sense to support business, but they were a little shocked at the time. So I think the word progressive is important to this town because I think we think differently. We are always looking at, well, I guess it depends, of course, what your definition of progressive is. But to me, progressive is people who think about other people, are people who are willing to try different things, are people who are willing to push the envelope. And that's important to ensure that this town thrives. And so the word progressive, in a way, captures a bit of who we are. Well, West Hollywood is certainly a trend-setting community, and it's always been that way. I mean, I think before we were a city, way back when, long before I was here and you were here, where there were bootleggers and things, different kinds of trends. But West Hollywood prides ourselves on being trendsetters. Trendsetters in the, the industry, the fashion industry, the design industry, but also trendsetters in our politics. As a city, we were always willing, and still are, to take positions that maybe other cities don't, to talk about issues that maybe might not impact us directly, but certainly indirectly. And I believe the way that we governed and govern today is trend-setting, and I see a lot of cities over time beginning to do that. Think globally, act locally. I think we were one of the first cities to really take that to heart. Well, in a world of constant change, I think some of the things about West Hollywood that endure is its people. As a community, we don't all agree on everything, needless to say, and that's good, right? Not every day, but that's good. But I believe that most people who live here really care about the city, and they care about each other, and they care about making the world better, even if we might have some different ideas of how that works. So that, to me, with all the change that occurs, I feel really confident that that's the constant that keeps, the city moving forward. Well, thinking about what West Hollywood looked like in 2121 is almost impossible, because change happens so quickly, I mean, goodness, when we, incorporated 35 years ago, just think of the things we didn't have. This internet, who even knew what that was, even the laptops and things. I mean, you just didn't have all this technology. So in a way, I can't imagine, but I guess if I'm thinking about it, I'd love to have a West Hollywood and an area where we didn't really need cars to get around, like we could just teletransport, that we could really enjoy the sidewalks that we have, and those streets could become something else, but it would always be a gathering place. Whatever gathering looked like in 2121, I want it to happen here in our city. And I want it to still be a city where we have people from all different places, different economics, different ideas, living together in a way that just thrives. So I don't want it all that different, but we could change a few things. Let's see, I've lived in West Hollywood probably over 40 years. There's certainly been a lot of things that have come and gone. I didn't really eat there that much, but I do miss seeing the tail of the pup. That was just so iconic and made you feel kind of at home, though I must confess I didn't eat there a lot. What else? I can't say I miss it, but that old median strip that was in the middle of the street. I mean, we've really made so many improvements as a city that you kind of forget what it looked like when we first started as a community. But I think we've added so many wonderful things that I don't spend time thinking about what's gone. I think more about what's here and what can be here in the future. Well, West Hollywood has been a leader since it first incorporated. Those first meetings where the city took a stand on human rights, took a stand on rent control, took a stand on making sure that this city gave services to people who needed it. So from the very beginning. But I think what's great, you can give a lot of lip service to things you believe in, but really, it comes to what you really do. And the consistency of our commitment to people, and even, one of my best memories of being a council member is when we were first got the right to have everyone marry. And when we as a city set up these wedding chapels in our park, like overnight, and everyone in City Hall was so excited about it. And we all, as council members, we had to be deputized at that time to do that. And just, to see the city and the government so willing to live up to what we really believe in, and then to have the privilege of marrying people. It was like such a glorious, glorious time, because I think it epitomized in many ways our hopes, right? Like, oh my God, that really happened, as well as the heart and soul of what drives this city, from the people who live here to the people who work here and the people who play here. So the city tried to become a city a few times, but I got involved, in that last time, 1984. And the issue for me and for many of us that worked on that campaign was making sure that housing was affordable. Housing is a right, not a privilege. Now, other people worked on the campaign for different reasons. There were a lot of people. Well, we all wanted local control, but some people were more concerned about development issues, economic issues. But for me and for the folks that I worked with, it was a lot about, the protecting affordable housing. And, I think the council has done a lot. But when we first started, and I wasn't on council then, but I was part of the Coalition of Economic Survival and would go to council meetings, which would go to all hours of the morning. The landlords were not always very happy with this idea of rent control. And we had this one landlord, I can't remember his name right now, but he painted his buildings red because he said, "You all are communists!" And he painted his buildings red. He was so outraged at the rent control that we were putting in.
Well, that's unbelievable, by the way.
But we did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. And overall, it has helped protect people and given them the stability to make the decisions they need to make in their lives, to know, that the rent can only be raised a certain amount. And we have a process in place, and we tweak it all the time. So people have a chance. If you have more expenses, you get a process to potentially raise your rents. But it's what I think has helped with the diversity of the city. I think rent control is one tool that we have to try to keep the housing stock affordable. Over the years, the state has taken away some of the power of cities to regulate that, and it's more challenging to regulate that housing. But I think it's so important if we want to be able to have a community that, we talk about being the creative city, you need creative people, and a lot of times the income that comes with creativity doesn't quite match the income you need to survive in a city. And frankly, I think our city, as so many cities around the country, are struggling right now with wanting to have a diverse housing stock, wanting to have affordable housing, but the rents are going up, the cost of living is going up. I mean, my goodness, here in the greater LA megalopolis, we just see how many people are homeless. It's an economic issue for many, many, many people. And I think, we are part of this megalopolis, and we struggle with it. The good thing is we've made, as a city, it's a place people want to be. It's a great city. I mean, I'm partial to it, I admit. But, I think we've made some great decisions, so we thrive and we have the revenues that we need. But I think we also struggle to make sure it's a city where everyone can afford to live, and that's getting harder and harder.
It's an exciting time.
It was an exciting time. Well, first, it was kind of my first foray into politics. I mean, I done some marching for the Equal Rights Amendment, which we are still marching for, by the way. But that time was great. I got to meet people who'd been involved in like social justice movements all their lives. And, so many of them aren't here anymore. But one of our first council members, Helen Albert, had been a teacher and actually had, been blacklisted. Frances Eisenberg, Ann Polsky, these were women that just were unafraid to knock on doors, unafraid to get signatures. There was just an energy, I got to meet this guy, John Heilman, who turned out to be a council member after a while. And so it was an exciting time, and we had a vision, all of us that were working on this campaign to make West Hollywood a city. We knew what we wanted. It was, we had just such a clear idea, at least that group, of what we were doing. So it was very exciting, and of course we won. That's great. And then those early days, I mean, our first city hall was in Plummer Park, in what's now the senior center. And then we moved to Trader Joe's, only it wasn't Trader Joe's. I think my office is now the produce section. But it was an exciting time. In fact, when we first became a city, they set up these committees to kind of put the city together. And I got appointed to the insurance committee. That's where I met Tony Melia, who, very active in the chamber, and got to learn from Tony all about the chamber. But I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about insurance. I mean, I barely had car insurance at the time, But we learned, and I think that was kind of the part about that beginning was we didn't all know everything, but together, we knew enough to get good experts when we didn't know. And honestly, how many people get to say they helped start a city? How exciting to be part of that. And again, I think maybe we were just so clear about what we wanted, and maybe that was unique, but it was that feel of we wanted a city where people matter and where we could have policies and programs that really benefited city people, that we wanted policies and programs that really would benefit people. And, here we are, 35 years later. I think still so much of that still happens at the government and with people in our community. I mean, our community is so generous. So many people serve on nonprofit boards. I mean, people serve on the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce, 1.9 square miles. This chamber thrives. And their leaders have been instrumental in shaping some of the economy throughout the LA megalopolis. So thinking about the obstacles when we became a city, of course, it was 35 years ago, and over time, sometimes you just remember the good things and not the bad things. But I'm sure the obstacles were suddenly you were in charge. The obstacles were that not everyone always agreed, and trying to figure out how to find that middle ground, or not a middle ground, but how to get there. The obstacles were people didn't think that West Hollywood would actually have a lot of money, and kind of figuring out how to ensure that we did. The obstacles were, as I said, not everyone was experts. And overnight, it's like, let's set up a city hall and let's enact laws, So there were, I think, the natural obstacles, but, and I don't want to glorify that time because it was hard, but, we just persevered. And, and there was a lot of attention on the city, of course. We, the first city to have a majority of council members from what was then the gay and lesbian community, that just L and G, but really from the LGBTQ community. That was pretty phenomenal and drew a lot of attention. And I have to say, though, just as I'm thinking the obstacle, we had to deal with the AIDS crisis so early on in our cityhood. And we just lost so many people that we shouldn't have lost at that time, when we needed them, when we needed their voices and what they brought to all of our discussions, because they were part of our community. And I think that's an obstacle, that's something that happened that, it happened and we can never get over it. We'll never know what else we could be and how else we'd appear if we hadn't lost so many people and had to devote so much time to that and fight, a federal government that just didn't even want to acknowledge what was going on. Maybe it made us stronger, and maybe it made us braver. When you see your friends, die, you kind of recognize how fragile life is. And we were really so young. So many of us were in our late 20s, early 30s. I think that shapes you, and I think it shaped many of our leaders here in the community, and many of them are here still today with that feeling of, let's just try it, because we don't know what tomorrow brings, so let's do it. So I think it shaped us in a way that, we probably didn't anticipate.